Africa is considered by most historians to be the oldest inhabited territory on Earth, but little is known about the continent's ancient artifacts. These artifacts range from the biblical Ark of the Covenant that is believed to reside in the Axum town of Ethiopia, inside the St. Mary of Zion Cathedral, to the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. Coming at number 10, we have the Ethiopian healing scrolls. These Ethiopian magical texts originated during the Aksumite Empire in the 1st to the 8th centuries, with several still in use by the 19th century, and are composed of texts and images on the skin of an animal that had been sacrificed in a ritual and were written in Ge'ez, the ancient liturgical language of Ethiopia. The scrolls were used to eliminate illness by purging evil spirits and demons from a sick person. The images on the scrolls are talismanic designs that have vivid depictions of saints, snakes, stars, demons, and angels. The prayers are written with carbon black ink, while the names of the Holy Trinity and headings are written with red ink. After the scroll's completion, the client's name would also be added in red. The images of saints and archangels in the healing scrolls are of significant importance as they are associated with spiritual help, according to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The scrolls frequently depict the archangel Michael, who according to the church's traditions is the heavenly warrior who defends the people from their enemies and has the power to force bad spirits out of a human's body. Several of the library's scrolls also feature suns or rays of light, which symbolize Christ in Ethiopian art. The scrolls had other uses too and could also be used to protect homes. If so, the scroll would be hung facing a door, and the angels on the scroll were thought to stop any evil spirits from entering the house. Number 9 on our list is the brass head of Ife. This 14th century brass head from Ife was discovered in 1938 at Wun Monija compound in Ife, southwestern Nigeria, and was made using the lost wax technique. This was an accidental discovery that was made during house building works and was found together with 16 other brass and copper heads and the upper half of a brass king figure. Ife was an ancient African city that flourished between the 11th and 15th century CE in what is known today as Nigeria, and though the sculpture is quite clearly the portrait of an unknown person, it is suggested that it was associated with an Ooni, meaning a ruler. Measuring 35 centimeters tall, the sculpture is believed to have been made between 1200 to 1400 CE, and the realism and sophisticated craftsmanship of the Ife objects challenged Western conceptions of African art. It was initially assumed that these beautiful sculptures could not have been made in Africa by African artists and were even compared with the classical traditions of ancient Greece and Rome. It has a headdress, suggesting a crown, that is of complex construction and is composed of different layers of tube-shaped beads and tassels, a decoration that is typical of the other bronze heads of Ife. The crown is topped by a crest with a rosette and a plume which now is slightly bent to one side. The elaborate beaded headdress was originally painted in red and black, as traces of the pigment are still visible today. The sculptures from Ife are now seen as one of the highest achievements of African art and culture, and there were suggestions that these heads were evidence that Ife was the site of the legendary lost civilization of Atlantis. Coming at number 8 we have the Nok Terracottas. In 1943, the oldest known sculptures in West Africa were unearthed in modern-day Nigeria and date back around 500 BCE to 200 CE. The artifacts were named after the modern Nigerian town of Nok, where they were first discovered. Over 160 archaeological sites have been found in central Nigeria that are associated with the Nok Terracottas that comprise of towns, villages, smelting furnaces, and ritual sites. These famous figurines were made of clays, and although very few of them have been found intact, it is clear that they were nearly life-sized. The sculptures constitute of human heads and other body parts wearing beads, anklets, and bracelets, with many having exaggerated features, such as enormous ears. The human figurines' faces have triangular and oval-shaped eyes with their heads having detailed hairstyles. The Nok are praised for being one of the very few civilizations in the world that transitioned from stone tools directly to iron tools, skipping the Bronze and Copper Age stages that are typical of developments in early civilizations. As archaeological findings continue, the results are pushing back the time period of the Nok culture further back to as early as 900 BCE. Coming at number 7 is the Rosetta Stone. This is an ancient Egyptian stone that was found in 1799 and bears inscriptions in several languages and scripts that include hieroglyphics, Demotic characters, and ancient Greek, and whose decipherment led to the understanding of the hieroglyphic writing. The ancient Egyptian writing system of hieroglyphics had been a mystery for a long time, and no one knew anything concerning the ancient Egyptians and the details of their 3,000 years of history before this wonderful discovery over 200 years ago in the Egyptian town of Rosetta, from where it was named after. This block of basalt measured 114 centimeters high and 72 centimeters wide and is a broken part of a bigger stone slab key that proved to be the key to the ancient writing system. It is believed to have been written by Egyptian priests in the 2nd century BC who inscribed the hieroglyphic text, then repeated the text in familiar Greek, which helped Egyptologists to decipher the symbols. Although 3 other fragmentary copies of the same decree were discovered later and several similar Egyptian bilingual or trilingual inscriptions are now known, the Rosetta Stone was the essential key to the modern understanding of ancient Egyptian literature and civilization. The Rosetta Stone has fallen under the hands of many, starting with the French, who discovered it when Napoleon led their forces to take over Egypt, but when the British arrived, they prevailed over French forces, and in 1801, they demanded the French to hand over the antiquities collection before leaving. In 1802, the Rosetta Stone was taken to London, where it currently resides on display at the British Museum. The stone is dark grey with the sparkle of its crystalline structure and a pink vein running across the top left corner and show a close resemblance to rocks from a small quarry on the west bank of the Nile in Aswan region. Number 6 on our list are the Maqdala Treasures. During the 1868 Battle of Maqdala that took place in Ethiopia, the British forces seized over 80 highly sacred objects within the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. The objects include a crown, ceremonial crosses, chalices, processional umbrella tops, weapons, textiles, jewelry and archaeological material, as well as altar tablets known as tablets. Along with that, the British forces took the then King Tuadro's 7-year-old son, Prince Alemayehu, to the UK, where he lived until his death in 1879 at the age of 18. His body remains buried at Windsor Castle despite Ethiopians' calls for its return. The splendid 18th century gold crown that was taken from the treasury of Tuodros II had embossed images of the apostles and evangelists and may have been donated by an Ethiopian emperor to one of the churches of Gondar. The artifacts were distributed to different institutions, with the British Museum acquiring the largest number, including a collection of 350 manuscripts, which are presently kept in the British Library, and 8 processional crosses used in the liturgy. In recent years, many European museums have been under massive pressure to return artifacts stolen from Africa during the 19th century, and some have given in and returned the treasures, with the latest being Germany, which repatriated thousands of Benin Bronzes that were in its museums to Nigeria. Some of the Maqdala treasures have been returned to Ethiopia in 2 different groups. The first one included a Coptic Bible and 3 horn beakers that had been put up for auction, but their sale was cancelled after a demand by the Ethiopian embassy. The items were then withdrawn the day before the auction, and a British writer Tahir Shah, through his Scheherazade Foundation, negotiated to buy them privately in order to return them back to Ethiopia. The second group included a processional cross, a priestly crown, a shield, a small icon of the crucifixion, and a talismanic scroll which were acquired by Tahir Shah from a Brussels collector. Coming at number 5 are the Benin Bronzes. These are a group of more than 5,000 sculptures which include elaborately decorated cast plaques, commemorative heads, animal and human figures, items of royal regalia, and personal ornaments. Collectively, the objects form the best examples of Benin art and were created from the 13th century by the Edo people of West Africa. Most of the plaques and other objects were looted by British forces during the Benin expedition of 1897, and about 200 pieces were taken to the British Museum in London, while the rest found their way to other European and American museums. The Benin Bronzes led to a greater appreciation in Europe of African culture and art. Initially, it appeared incredible to the discoverers that people supposedly so savage and backwards were responsible for such highly developed objects. And it is clear that the bronzes were made in Benin by an indigenous culture centuries before European contact. Some even wrongly concluded that Benin knowledge of metallurgy came from the Portuguese traders who were in contact with Benin in the early modern period, but it is clear that the bronzes were made in Benin by an indigenous culture centuries before European contact. Today, the artifacts still leave people dumbstruck, and people have referred to them as great works of art and triumphs of metal casting. These and other African pieces of art inspired Cubism, which is an early 20th century art movement that revolutionized European painting and sculpture. Number 4 on our list is the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead is definitely one of the most famous artifacts from ancient Egyptian culture and is a collection of magical spells that were placed in tombs and believed to protect and aid the deceased in the afterlife. This ancient Egyptian funerary text was generally written on papyrus and used from the beginning of the New Kingdom around 1550 BCE to around 50 BCE. It was an upgrade from writing the texts on the coffins and the walls of the pyramids, which was done during the Middle and Old Egyptian kingdoms. They imagined the afterlife as a perilous journey that one had to make to get to paradise, so one would need magical help along the way, so they placed the spells on items in the tomb, which allowed the mummy to recite them from within his coffin. The texts from the book were written in either hieroglyphic or in a form of hieratic script and includes individual chapters or spells. Each copy obtained from the tombs contained different spells, thus implying that no single Book of the Dead scroll is identical to another. These texts were certainly important to ancient Egyptians as they prepared them for life after death and had the power to conjure up all the parts of one's body for the spiritual journey. The book also contains the spell for the opening of the mouth ceremony, which is a ritual that was performed before the mummy was sealed in its tomb and was often depicted in the tomb decoration. Spells from the Book of the Dead were not always written down on manuscripts, as they were sometimes written down on the bandages that wrapped the buried mummy. There were also inscriptions on Tutankhamun's iconic golden death mask. Some of the spells were to make sure you can control your own body after death, and others were for protecting yourself from being attacked on the perilous journey to the afterlife by snakes, crocodiles and insects. Ancient Egyptians believed that one could also be attacked by gods or demons, and in the next life, there were gods who were guarding gateways, who if you didn't give the right answers to their questions, they could attack you because they had knives and snakes in their hands. The Book of the Dead has helped reveal central aspects of the ancient Egyptians' belief system, especially about the afterlife. Number 3 on our list, we have the Ark of the Covenant. There has been a long-standing religious legend in Ethiopia that the biblical Ark of the Covenant is housed inside the Church of St. Mary of Zion in the small town of Axum in Ethiopia, where it has been protected for over 3,000 years up to this day. According to Ethiopian tradition, the Ark of the Covenant was brought there 3,000 years ago by Menelik, the son of the Queen of Sheba and Israel's King Solomon. The legend goes further to state that the Queen of Sheba, who according to the Kebra Nagast, which is the Ethiopian national epic and foundation story, was from Ethiopia, and that she traveled to Jerusalem, where she was tricked by King Solomon to sleep together and later gave birth to Menelik after she returned home. Menelik would later go back to Jerusalem, where he studied with his father before taking the ark and bringing it to Ethiopia, where it was kept in the Church of St. Mary of Zion, and only the guardian of the Ark of the Covenant can see it. According to the Bible, the ark is a gold-plated wooden chest that housed the 2 tablets of the law given to Moses by God and had a golden lid that is ornamented with 2 golden cherubim. Today, every Ethiopian church is built according to the same tripartite model as the ark, where a replica of the Ark of the Covenant is kept at the center and only priests are allowed into this part. The earliest evidence that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia appears at the end of the 12th century when an Armenian named Abu Saleh, who died in 1208, wrote in Arabic at Cairo that the Ethiopians possessed the Ark of the Covenant and that it was carried by a large number of Israelites. Others dispute and debunk this legend, claiming that, at most, the ark in the church is merely a replica of the real thing. Coming at number 2 is the Ethiopian Bible. The Orthodox Tewahedo biblical canon is a version of the Christian Bible, which at 81 to 88 books is the largest and most diverse biblical canon in traditional Christendom. The Bible is written in Ge'ez, which is an ancient Ethiopian language, and Western scholars have classified the books of the canon into 2 categories: the narrower canon, which consists mostly of books familiar to the West, and the broader canon, which includes 9 additional books. The incredible Garima Gospels are named after a monk who arrived in the country in 494 AD and is said to have copied them out in just one day. The incredible relic has been kept ever since in the Garima monastery near Adwa in the northern part of the country, where experts believe it is the earliest example of book binding that is still attached to the original pages. The Ethiopian Bible includes the books of Enoch, Esdras, Baruch, and all 3 books of Maccabees, and a host of others that are not in the King James Version, and dates to between 330 and 650 C. These incredible possessions solidify the fact that Ethiopia is truly one of the world's oldest civilization. Top on our list are the Treasures of Tutankhamun. The discovery of the tomb of the young King Tutankhamun 100 years ago, in 1922, gave a lot of insight into ancient Egypt and gave a glimpse of what the pharaohs took with them to the afterlife. Over 3,000 treasures were found inside the tomb of this boy pharaoh, and it is reported that when archaeologist Howard Carter and colleagues discovered the king's tomb, he reported seeing wonderful things. King Tut was found buried in a quartzite sarcophagus containing 3 nesting coffins. His mummy rested in the innermost one, which is made of solid gold and weighs approximately 110 kilograms, and was surrounded by thousands of priceless treasures. They included his solid gold funeral mask, a gilded figure of goddess Selkut, jewelry, furniture, and other objects for the afterlife. The iconic death mask is probably the most famous artifact found buried with him in his tomb. It was placed on King Tutankhamun's face and was made mainly from 2 layers of high-carat gold. The face represents the pharaoh's standard image, as the same image was found elsewhere in the tomb. A life-sized statue of Tutankhamun was found guarding the entrance of the young pharaoh's burial chamber and had black skin, golden eyes and golden clothing. 2 daggers, one with a blade of gold and the other of iron, were also found in his tomb, and it is believed that the iron used in the dagger was out of this world, perhaps crafted from a meteorite, and had a golden handle with carved patterns on it. Another incredible discovery in his burial chamber was his golden throne that had an image in the center showing Tutankhamun and his wife. The golden throne of Tutankhamun was mainly made out of wood and is entirely covered in a layer of pure gold, with silver included in some of the throne's areas. Features of the throne also included tiles of colored precious stones and glass. One of the lesser-known treasures from King Tut's tomb is a mannequin that is thought to have been used to help choose, adjust and store the king's clothes and jewelry. The British archaeologist Howard Carter found hundreds of garments including 12 sumptuous robes, sandals, underwear, and even King Tut's baby clothes. Excavators also found a gold-covered bed which is believed to have been made for the king's funeral, as the ancient Egyptians believed that the dead were just asleep and that they woke up when they were reborn in the afterlife. We can't really cover all the incredible treasures found in King Tut's burial chamber in this video. But one thing for sure. The artifacts found in his tomb are beyond measure and have continued to marvel the world up to this day.